Hello and thanks for joining us at the Barnsley Chronicle, where we've got a bumper playoff preview for you. I'll be speaking with our sports editor Doug O'Kane to preview the match at Bolton. We'll also be speaking to Doug's counterpart Mark Isles at the Bolton News. But first off, here's what Michael Duff had to say at Thursday morning's pre-match press conference.
If you're going to describe it in a few words, it would be they want to dominate the ball. They're aggressive in their press. They don't just toss it in the box from anywhere. They work it into really good areas, good rotations. So, yeah, a good footballing team is how I describe them. But you look at their defensive record as well. They've not conceded many goals either. So there's obviously a structure and organisation to it as well. So we'll have to be included.
The games that you've had, some of them previously against them, been a little bit maybe tetchy and bad tempers at times, a few arguments on the sidelines, obviously with the pressure of the playoffs as well. You're probably expecting similar pressure this time?
Not really. Sometimes it happens when teams play games so close together. But the arguments on the sidelines, it's two benches wanting to win, same as the two teams. So as long as it doesn't spill over, Ian's a competitive bloke, I'm a competitive bloke. We used to mark each other at corners, so yeah, as long as it doesn't cross the line, it's just two managers defending their team, wanting the best for their team, and the players are doing the same thing. So yeah, there's nothing in that.
Is it an advantage to be here in the second leg?
I'll tell you in 10 days' time. I don't know. I haven't looked into historical things or anything because it's irrelevant. It's just trying to win the next two games. We might win the first one 3-0 and get beat. I've had that before. When I was at Cheltenham, we beat Northampton 2-0 away and got beat 3 at home. Completely didn't see it happening, but hopefully we'll learn from that because it was a season's worth of work unravelling in front of your eyes, and just basically we gave 3 goals away. The players hadn't made individual mistakes like that all season. That's what pressure can do. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but they're the things you can't account for.
So then, Doug, the first leg, what are we going to expect from this trip to Bolton?
Yeah, tough one to call, isn't it? They're only 5 points separate the teams in the league. Bolton probably finished the season a tiny bit stronger in the last few weeks. Obviously got in a bit later into the playoffs. It's a tough one to know what to expect going there first. Obviously a tough one for Barnsley. They've had a couple of decent results there this season, to be fair. Bolton, I think, quite a decent passing team out from the back and play quite attractive football. Barnsley will fancy their chances of matching that and hoping to get a decent result. So yeah, I think a decent crowd atmosphere and hopefully a good game of football.
I know Duff himself wouldn't be pressed on this matter, but do you think it's a good thing, given Barnsley's home record, that they are at home in the second leg?
Yeah, I think so. Like you say, they played very well at home, especially against a lot of the big teams. Maybe not Ipswich a couple of weeks ago, but generally they've done well in big matches at home. And I just think, that if the first leg is relatively tight, then the second leg is where it's going to be decided. So it will be decided at Oakwell in front of the majority of Barnsley fans, so that has to be an advantage. And then, of course, if you can go further down the road into extra time and penalties, that will also be at home. So it is that slight advantage, but how the teams play is obviously more important.
I found it interesting that Luke O'Connell said that they don't want to go there and get a 1-1. How much truth there is in that, and whether they perhaps take that given how the game might pan out. But that's an interesting mindset.
Yeah, I think they'd like to go there and win and put themselves well ahead. I think they've had some really good matches against big teams this season and believe they can potentially do that again. But if it is a draw there, then it won't be a bad result, and it's all to play for coming back at Oakwell.
Yeah. So obviously they've met a few times already this season. What are your recollections of those games?
Yeah, the 0-0 was first game in the league. Both the games in Bolton were sort of bad-tempered affairs, really. A few arguments. Connell, who we just mentioned, got booed off in the first game for allegedly time wasting, and the second game there was something about the towels that were around the pitch from Barnsley as well, allegedly being put in a puddle. And Ian Evatt and Michael Duff has had a few choice words on the sidelines as well. They didn't go too far, but yeah, they didn't seem best pleased with each other at that point. So, and then you got the home game as well on January the 2nd, when Mads Andersen got sent off in I think the 8th or 9th minute or something like that, and obviously that completely changed the game and Bolton won it 3-0. So you can't really, I don't think you can read too much into them because of what happened, especially the last time, and also that was 4 or 5 months ago now, so the teams have changed quite a lot since then.
Yeah. So where do Bolton's threats come from?
Well, Dion Charles is their top scorer. He's got 16 goals in the league this season. Everyone seems to say their best player is the right wing back Connor Bradley, on loan from Liverpool, teenager, Northern Ireland international, really highly rated. So be interested to see him come up against Nicky Cadden. So they're probably the main ones. The goalkeeper's kept a lot of clean sheets as well this season. James Trafford on loan from Man City. So there's some good young players in there, which should be a good battle.
Yeah, and a former Barnsley striker in Victor as well.
Yeah, there's a few Barnsley players, ex-Barnsley players. Obviously, Victor Adeboyejo will be the main one that everyone looks to. He was at Barnsley last year. Ended up not turning down a contract, moving to Burton, as we know, and doing really well and getting a big move to Bolton. So I think he's scored 3 goals for Bolton so far this season. But we know what he'll bring if he starts or even comes off the bench. So I think Bolton rotate their strikers a lot. So I think Charles will start, but I'm not sure who. There's about 4 or 5 other options to go alongside him, but it could be Victor, and Barnsley will know all about him if he does start.
I think I'm right in saying this is your 3rd playoff campaign as Barnsley reporter.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, the 2016 one under Heckingbottom got a big playoff semi-final win over Walsall, and then the one last 2 years ago behind closed doors when they lost at Swansea. They're my semi-final memories. So one of each. Hopefully, it goes 2-1 in terms of the wins category.
Of course. Are there any eyes on the other tie? I mean, for someone who's seen Peterborough really recently, and obviously Sheffield Wednesday twice, it's another interesting tie, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I don't think many people will have thought about that too much, because Bolton seems like a really tough game to get through, but obviously they present different challenges if they get to their final at Wembley. The South Yorkshire derby at the National Stadium will be on a few people's minds, but I think we've both got 180 tough minutes to get through before that happens.
Just start off with a bit more team news stuff first of all. Got a predicted lineup, or you can email that across if you haven't got it at the top of your head, but predicted lineup and sort of injuries and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually, for the first time in ages, last weekend there was absolutely nobody in the treatment room at Bolton, and then they went to Bristol Rovers last weekend on the Sunday, 1-3-2, but they lost the vice captain Gethin Jones, picked up a bit of a hamstring injury. Now we haven't had that confirmed yet, but it doesn't look very good that he's going to be available certainly for the first leg. So there will be a change in the defence somewhere. They're lucky in as much as they've had a few players coming back. So you have Ricardo Santos played 45 minutes at the weekend. He probably will come back and start. You've got Owen Toll one side of him and potentially George Johnson the other side of him. I would have said a back 3. Your left wing back, Declan John probably, although Randell Williams played very well last weekend, gave himself a good shout. Right-hand side, Connor Bradley will come back into the team. He was rested, had a slight shoulder injury last weekend, and definitely one of Bolton's better players. Midfield 3 is a tough one to predict, but I'd say that Kyle Dempsey's very likely. He had a great game at Barnsley earlier in the season. Then you've got Josh Sheehan and Aaron Morley, potentially, the other 2. Kieran Lee to throw in there as well, potentially. And then the front 2 will be Dion Charles plus another. Victor Adeboyejo, potentially against his old club. Maybe that's the way they'll go. But he's, for once, I mean, he's got Yondani Budvarsson back. He's got Jack Iredale back in the squad, potentially. So it's actually as good as it's been for several months, really, for Bolton.
Oh, great stuff. So other than Gethin Jones, there's no real injury sort of question marks?
Nothing really. I mean, it may be too soon for Budvarsson and Iredale because they've only just come back in, but realistically, there's no other major injuries. Okay,
good stuff. You mentioned Victor Adeboyejo. How's he done so far?
It's been a tough one for him. I think he's definitely a trier. There's no two ways about that. I think he's scored a few goals. Obviously, he got plenty at Burton, and you know you can see why they've bought him. You can see where he fits in it. But like a few of Bolton's January signings, it's taken them a little bit to get going and to start showing what they can do. Now, I'd say with Victor, he's probably done that as well as any of them. So he's starting to look a bit more comfortable now and starting to play a bit more as you'd want him, because Bolton asks so much of their front players in terms of closing down and pressing and this sort of high energy football that Bolton try and play. It's not easy, and so there's a lot of rotation there because they have to keep a lot of the energy up, and so none of the players, with the exception of maybe Dion Charles, get a lot of football because they're always interchanging and rotating. And I think sometimes some players, Dan Lundaloo is another one for Bolton, who maybe used to playing all the time when he was at Cheltenham. Suddenly he's not the main man, if you will, and you've got to get your head around that a little bit. And I think that's probably the case with Victor as well, from having been at Burton and playing every single week. But there's some good signs. I mean, you know what he brings. He's quick. He's powerful. He's got a goal in him, even though he may not have shown it at times at Barnsley. But he's starting to settle in at Bolton.
Great. And you touched on it there, but sort of obviously Barnsley haven't seen Bolton play for a fair while. How would you describe their style of play and how they'll approach the game?
Yeah, I mean, Ian Everett's always been known for possession-based football. He likes control. I mean, I hate the coaching manual speak, but controlling the game in and out of possession, and they play 3-4-1-2. So the wing backs are especially important. I think Conor Bradley, particularly on the right hand side, he's on loan from Liverpool, has been outstanding. He's been the sort of main outlet most of the season. But they do like to control possession. They like to tire the opposition down. A lot of their goals come 60 minutes plus, because they do tend to move the ball around and make, wear down some teams. I think Barnsley have probably been as good as anybody here as kind of limiting that damage in the 2 times they've been here. So I would imagine that the likes of Luca Canal are going to be really important in trying to wrestle control of that midfield and trying to get hold of the ball and making Bolton do the work. But yeah, I mean, it's a passing brand. It's as attractive, considering Bolton were not necessarily known for their great football in the Premier League days. It's been a style of football that I think's got a lot of people back, and it's winning fans over.
And is there a lot of confidence going into this game that you can get past Barnsley and go back to Wembley?
I think so. I would have said, if you'd have asked me sort of 2 or 3 weeks ago, I might have been a bit wavering, because there was a lot of questions asked to the January signings and whether or not they were settling, and some of the performances were a bit up and down after a couple of injuries in defence. But they've kept things ticking over. I think they've only lost 1 in 10. And towards the end of the season, they've beaten Fleetwood, beaten Bristol Rovers, and just made sure they finished it on that sort of crest of a wave. And within those 2 games, some of those January signings have suddenly sparked. So the same sort of criticisms aren't necessarily being made anymore. So they're in a good place, I would have said, going into the game. But they're weird things, playoffs, aren't they? I mean, it's almost pointless looking back on the last 46 games, because none of it matters really. It's who shows up on the day, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, so you wouldn't read too much into the 3-0 win at Oakwell then?
Well, I mean, when the lads go out there, they may take something from it, but I don't know whether you can do, because as you rightly said before, Bolton get a goal ahead, the psychology shifts. Barnsley do the same, the psychology shifts. There's going to be a lot of twists and turns in it, I'm sure. And what happened, 4 or 5 months ago, is it going to be the deciding factor? I'm sure.
Got an excellent defensive record. That's obviously something Bolton will be proud of, and would probably key to this tie as well. Yeah,
definitely. I think James Trafford, the goalkeeper, is on loan from Manchester City. He's played for England under 21s this season. He's been outstanding. He's kept, I think, he's 26 clean sheets now this season, which is a club record. The defence has been brilliant, even though it's changed quite a lot throughout the season. There's been injuries that have changed personnel, but the system stayed the same. They like to play out from the back. They'll take risks. Definitely in possession. They give me kittens. It's no wonder I've got very little hair on my head. But they've done really well this season. I can't fault them in defence. It seems to have worked for them.
Great stuff, and yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. Unless there's anything else you think we should know about Bolton.
I would just say it's going to be a great atmosphere. I'm a little sad that Barnsley are only going to get the top tier, just away to my left here. But hopefully Bolton can fill the rest of it and make sure it's going to be a really big atmosphere. I'm looking forward to it. I just hope the watering holes of Barnsley are ready on next Friday night.
Great, thank you, Mark.
And don't forget, if you're enjoying our content, subscribe to the channel. You'll be alerted when we've got new videos, and we're hoping to do a few more next week.